A lot of men do this, and I know that for a fact. They hide their emotions and the things they're going through.
It plays back to the challenges we have around men's mental health, which is really sad.
So when they see people like that who are living a lavish life and they listen to those kind of words and connotations, they're going to follow it because they think, okay, so if I follow this behavior, obviously I'm going to have money, I'm going to have women, I'm going to have all sorts.
I struggle a little bit sometimes when I think about the terms toxic masculinity and just how damaging that is for a young man to hear.
Welcome back to the Hullraiser Podcast. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about unlearning the algorithm and specifically what that means for our young men today and in a social media context. And I am really pleased to invite one of our current students to the couch today. Welcome to Ezekiel.
I'm going to sit back and relax for a moment, Ezekiel. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Of course. Hello all, my name is Ezekiel. I am a student at Hull College studying level 3 business. I am in my final year and I am also a Nigerian and Jamaican male. I have a lot of culture from different backgrounds and I'm happy to be here today to talk about this topic.
Brilliant. Welcome. So specifically, what are we interested in? I think this is a really important topic and has been for a really, really long time, particularly when we consider men's mental health and how we know that unfortunately our male counterparts, our male community, there is a much higher rate of suicide, much higher rate of loneliness and these challenges. But equally, and perhaps topically now, given the recent Netflix drama covering this, whole discussion about masculinity. So specifically today, I really want to explore how online spaces such as social media are really contributing to the young man's experience and that topic of masculinity. And it's a big and emotive thing. And I think what you've said, Ezekiel, about your diverse cultures where you've lived. We obviously had a little chat before we sat down on the couch today about living in different places up and down the country and what that means and how that feels and how the male experience is different. But I think I would like to open with a question first because I've pondered it myself. And I struggle a little bit sometimes when I think about the terms toxic masculinity and just how damaging that is for a young man to hear. So what, in your opinion, what do you think about this term masculinity? What does it mean?
I mean, I was raised in a single parent household. So obviously, depending on whether you have both parents or one parent, you're going to have a different viewpoint on certain aspects of life. And masculinity is one of them. So obviously, my mum has raised me since I was young. Obviously, and my brothers as well. And I'm happy that I've had my mum. And I think she's taught me the best that she can because she had to step up in that role of being mother and father, which I respect her highly for. But at the same time, for me, when it comes to masculinity, I like to use the saying where a fish can't teach a fisherman how to catch a fish. So when I say that, I mean like, if we talk about in masculinity terms, personally, I don't think a woman can teach a man how to be a man. They may have advice on how to be one, but you can't teach one how to be one. Obviously, you need that role, that male, as much as you need a woman in the household, you need that male role model to like set discipline and the standard for what a man should be. And obviously the woman needs to be there to show a woman what a woman should be, because obviously everyone's as equally as important as each other in a partnership. So masculinity to me, if I was going to define it, it's a man that obviously looks after his own, has high respect and morals, respects the people around him, respects the environment around him. And obviously, for me, one of the main things with masculinity is just showing respect. Because, and even if you're a woman as well, showing respect, because obviously you want to receive what you put out there. And obviously, I feel sure everyone wants to be respected, so just got to give respect out and you'll get that in return.
Yeah, 100%. And so I said that, I have some challenges when I think about the term masculinity, in particular toxic masculinity. And you've just really hit the nail on the head there because, we think about masculinity and you might think, it says strength, it says courage, it's about that man being that role model. And all of these things that you've discussed that do apply to all gender it's applicable, but there's the male experience in it. And we also know, if we look at the world of work, for example, it's changing massively. We once upon a time had really traditional ideas about jobs women should have and men should have. They're changing. But we do still have environments where men work predominantly. And where women work predominantly. And those environments are really important in the social context. We consider nursing, it's a female-dominated environment. And thank you to our nurses. If we consider construction and building our homes, it's a male-dominated environment. Thank you to our males for their contribution, right? So I think that's really interesting. And when I said I kind of struggle with it a little bit sometimes, is because we've started to now have this conversation about toxic masculinity. And I go, well, what's the difference? And are those things that we've just talked about, those really good qualities, they're a good thing? Surely that's a great thing to have real male role models. That's a positive thing for boys and girls growing up, right?
I'd like to touch upon what you mentioned about the obviously the dominated job sections. So obviously nurses, I feel like they're mainly dominated by women because people tend to feel more comfortable around women. And when you're being taken care of in hospital, you want to, because obviously when it comes to relationship, men nature over nurture, women mainly nurture. If you go back to traditional times, women were the nurturers and men would go out, gather and hunt and stuff like that. So I think those kind of ideals kind of translated to these job parts as well, because not to be I don't think it's rude to say, but I would trust a nurse if she was I would be more calm and relaxed if the nurse was a female compared to and I'd be more confident. I know this sounds crazy, but I'd be more confident if the construction worker was a male, just because I know physical labor is what males are, their bodies are made to be better at, if you know what I mean. Because obviously you can tell by biology, a male's body mass is going to be different to a woman's. Obviously it's not it's just how it is. So in those terms, that's what I want to touch upon as well. And then also the toxic masculinity thing you mentioned as well, that's very interesting to me, because there's a situation that I remember where obviously women want men to show their emotion and stuff like that, but then there's times when if a man shows his emotion, so not showing his emotion is toxic masculinity, but then there's been times when obviously everyone's allowed to have their opinion and what they like. But then when a man does show his emotion, there seems to be a problem with it. So it's people pick and choose when toxic masculinity, it's not even men that choose the definition of it. It's mainly, I guess, society sets that standard, but yeah.
I really like that point that you've just made, because it plays back to the challenges we have around men's mental health, which is really sad. Significantly more men commit suicide. It's a problem. I think it's about a third more. That's a lot. That's internationally. It shows up everywhere. We know that men are less likely to talk, and then when they are, like you say, they have this experience. And there's something I was thinking about in preparing for this about that kind of emotional repression that men might experience. And obviously we're not being completely a binary here. It doesn't apply to everybody all the time, but the experience is real, and we know it is. When we consider things like the recent story on adulthood, it's a real thing that's happening to the male community, and particularly young men, where we see the rise of social media and things like that. So just on that point around emotional repression, you actually said that's related to toxic masculinity. So is that, in your experience as a young male, what toxic masculinity is? Do you feel perhaps sometimes, or in fact, let me just ask you, how do you feel about the term toxic masculinity, and what does that mean, and how does that differ to the discussion we've just had about the male experience?
I think, it does link to me personally, because I've had personal experiences where I think it's been, obviously I don't speak about it much because it's just one of those things that you deal with and you move on. But for 2025, 3 years ago, one of my close friends had passed away because they had dealt with, obviously talking about the mental illness, mental issues thing that you're just talking about. They had dealt with someone throwing allegations towards them. And these allegations, they weren't true. And they later got proven not to be true.
Wow.
But the damage was already done.
Yeah.
His mental was already messed up. And it was one of those things where he locked himself in his room, didn't leave.
Wow.
No one could get through to him. Obviously, he spoke to me because I was just one of his closest friends. But, like, I knew it was bad, but you never know how bad it is because you're not the person that's dealing with it. So that's why topics like these are like, they mean a lot to me, because obviously you don't know what everyone's going through. And there's like a lack of also, I know this is a side note, but there's a lack of punishment on those who falsely, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And obviously due to that situation, you've completely changed my friend's life, because obviously he's left us now, and you changed everyone else's life around it just because you felt a type of way on a decision that you've either made yourself or because you felt like making it in the moment. But no amount of apology is going to fix, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. Yeah. And touching on that, obviously with the mental issues and stuff, and obviously men not being allowed to speak up about it, that's one of the things, because when you get things like that against you, you feel, it makes you feel like not valued in society anymore, because that's I feel like those kind of allegations, that's one of the things that kind of strips away your identity as human, because it ruins who you are, because that stuck to you, even though it's not true, it's stuck to you. When people hear your name, they're going to remember that situation you was in. And obviously due to all that and him not having, I don't think he had the right amount of help at the time, but obviously due to that situation, we get to where we are now. But you know what I mean? So, but obviously I think I learned a lot from his situation as well, because I'd say I'm a lot more open with like family now. Like obviously if there's things that are going on that annoy me, or that I wouldn't say I'm going through, like if I know there's certain things I can take on my own, because obviously that's just certain things I'm gonna keep to myself. But if there's something where it's like, yeah, I need to tell my mum, like I tell my mum everything, because she's the only one I've had since I was a kid. So obviously I'm going to tell her everything. And also she's lived a lot and been through a lot. So she's going to be able to give me advice that I need, because she's a lot older than me, of course. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I feel like people, like, it's easier said than done to speak out on things that are going on in your head. But at the same time, you need people that are kind of, obviously you're trying to push it out, but they're trying to push people away, but you need people who are going to keep trying to break that wall with you. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's one of the things there, though.
You've just said breaking walls, and I was thinking about there are some still some perhaps unseen, intangential barriers here, even though we've seen development in the way that we can have discussions with young men. And can I just say, actually, credit to you, you know, for sharing as you just have, Ezekiel, and the learning that you took from it. You know, defending your friend as well, because of course that experience and how that's ended and what happened there is really challenging. But we have a responsibility, I think, as society to learn from those things. And the point you made is really poignant, that there are experiences, and it is mostly our male community and our male counterparts who experience false allegations and things like that. I mean, that's incredibly damaging. So on one hand, we have this emotional repression cycle where it's kind of men are not pushed into, but in that environment where you perhaps can't speak out, and then also experiencing where there's been they've been spoken against in a way that's untrue, and then what do you do about that? So that kind of, when I put those two things together, it's a bit of a juxtaposition there that you know, of the experience that young men are happening, and it's so important. So I'm really glad we're talking about this. So I'm just also interested in what we think about the impact of and rise of social media, how people engage in social media, first of all, and what that's doing for the young man experience, and perhaps this echo chamber of extreme around male masculinity. And I also want to touch on the social media and the influence a bit, because it's really interesting. So your thoughts, Ezekiel?
I think, you see, social media to me, it's like a double-edged sword. Obviously, it gives people the information they need, but at the same time, you can't take everything at face value. So obviously, the impact that I think it has on masculinity is it can give people a warped view of it. Because, for example, let's say you see a clip and the clip just shows a man being well, as they say, toxic, because obviously they say toxic masculinity, or this clip shows toxic masculinity. But then that's just a clip. There could have been a whole other story behind it from that caused that situation or after. But they've only showed that specific part. So social media allows people is very biased. It allows people to use like how they feel, manipulate a clip or a word or whatever was said in order to influence like behavior from people or society in general. For example, obviously you said we was going to speak about this, but people I can't remember his name. He's the one who caused like a lot of, during that one hatred thing, when the riots and stuff like that. I can't remember his name. Tommy Robinson. Yeah.
Yes.
So he what's it called? He fueled the flames to that a bit as well, you know what I mean? It caused more people to get riled up. And in that situation, obviously, it wasn't mainly women that were out breaking things, bashing things. It was men. And obviously, it was a specific...
point in time.
Yeah, a specific point in time and like type of men that did it. But at the same time, it was men. You didn't see... women may have been out saying, screaming, whatever, but the men were the one doing the damage mainly anyways and attacking people, because I have people that I'm close to that were attacked. There was a video out there where their car got smashed and the woman in the car has literally just given birth to a baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were just absolutely destroying their car and stuff like that. Obviously, they're good now. So, I mean, obviously, because it was time ago, but happy that they're okay. But that's how social media can be a double-edged sword. Yes, it gave people the notice and warning that these things were going to happen, so people had knowledge.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that platform was also used to fuel such behavior and stuff like that.
So it can give us that connectivity and that connection, and it can give us sort of insights and sharing opportunities, and is used a lot for social purposes, for socialising. It's a tool of socialising in some respects, and for some people that's not common. Obviously, that's not that's my opinion, and that's perhaps not relevant to everybody. Yeah. But what you're describing to me suggests it's also creating that echo chamber. Yeah. And I think I know that, it's like the algorithms on social medias play you more of what you look at. So therefore there's the belief that that's the only perspective. So like you described, Ezekiel, one little clip that might be perceived as toxic masculinity, and then that becomes kind of overplayed and played out and creates this echo chamber that's common and that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and you don't even have to like the video. You can just view the video and then it's just all over your feed at that point.
Yeah. And so I want to double back to the word toxic. Yeah. Because I think, it's worth a conversation, isn't it? How does that actually land in the young male community? Because I think about these things, like I've said, I've got two brothers. And so I'm always really interested in this experience of males. I worry about my brothers because I think, male rates of suicide, all of these kind of things, all of these challenges, what is their world experience, what's their everyday experience, and how do they feel? I'm very conscious of that. And I just wondering, and I always think about this, how does it feel for young men hearing this narrative about themselves?
I think, to be honest, at this point I've become desensitized to the word.
Right.
Obviously bringing another topic in, just like obviously racial slurs, I've become desensitized to it because we hear these things so much. And I feel like as time goes on, when you hear something so much, you just kind of get used to it. I feel like this generation has adopted a mindset of it is what it is. You know what I mean? You can't really change people's minds. You know what I mean? They have to change their minds for themselves. Yeah, you can say you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, but people are still going to do it. So with that toxic word, impacting me as a male and obviously other males that I know, it just feels like, at first anyways, it was like, I wouldn't say it made me confused, because I would just be seeing like a normal masculine thing, and then it would just be labeled as toxic masculinity. But like, for example, I feel like mainly America has a really warped view on masculinity, because I saw a video, a guy was just opening a door for a woman, and then what's it called? He said that was misogynistic because she can open her own door. But then people cry chivalry's dead, but he's just showing chivalry. And then
it's really interesting, isn't it?
And then he's showing chivalry, but then it's like you can't pick and choose when you want a man to be a man. If you want a man to be a man, you let him be a man.
Yeah.
If you don't want a man to be a man, then don't look for that kind of man. But
this is making me think back to the earlier part of the conversation where we talked about masculinity and kind of said, but that's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's okay. That's all right if that is the contribution or part of a contribution that the male community make. That's okay. So what I'm kind of getting here is there seems to be a bit of a fine line, but there's probably also some extremes, right?
Yes.
And so we've talked about, and I really love how you just sort of directly said, if somebody's going to do something, they're going to do something, that kind of thing. And that's very true. It's human behaviour, right? But we do also know that online spaces, the online echo chamber, if you like, where you're just being fed particular news and particular information, where you might be in an environment that is perhaps flooded with opinions of people, like you take, for example, Andrew Tate. Everybody's got something to say about Andrew Tate and the subject of toxic masculinity. So what do you think about how that is actually influencing some of the behaviours of young men? And when we particularly think about the story of adolescence, knowing that this stuff is actually real?
I think it influences them in... There's two ways I feel like it influences them. And it also depends on the person as well. Because with everything comes common sense. Yeah. Some people just may have more of it than others. So yes, you can always, for example, you said Andrew Tate. He says very controversial things. But then there's also certain things where you don't 100% say bad things all the time. There's certain things you can pick from him where, those are thing that he said where he said men should always look after women. Or like, you know what I mean? Which is something I can agree with. But then there's other parts that I can't agree with because that's just, dumb or something crazy to say. But then obviously the men should look after women. That's what I'm going to understand because, that's common sense. But then again, it may be different because obviously I was raised by a woman. Obviously, back to what you're saying on little like men or men who are still young. Obviously, this could mainly, personally, I feel like it would affect mostly men who struggle with like having confidence in themselves. Yeah. That's the main like group of people that I think it affects the most because men with confidence already know what they've got. They already know what they can do. But people who are sheltered who haven't experienced much, haven't been through situations where they need to step out in the limelight and stuff like that. They may just be at home seeing this in the dark or wherever they are and because that's the only form of outside that they have. They haven't experienced outside. Yeah. That's the only form that they have. They see older men. And it will be kind of, when Andrew Tate talks and stuff and people like that, it's kind of shown behind luxury. Yeah. So when they see people like that who are living a lavish life and they listen to those kind of words and connotations, they're going to follow it because they think, okay, so if I follow this behavior, obviously I'm going to have money, I'm going to have women, I'm going to have all sorts. So obviously children are the most impressionable. So they're going to be the most easiest to manipulate. And even if you, like, for example, parents do it all the time, but there's always for me, I feel like there's a good kind of manipulation. For example, parents do it all the time. When parents speak their own language to their children, they naturally learn it because they're impressionable. And when parents discipline their children, like, let's say a kid runs across the road and then the mum says you shouldn't do that and just gives them a little tap on the hand. Yes, it may be like, obviously I use the word manipulation, but like it manipulates their mind to not do that again. So that's what I mean by
creates behaviours.
Yeah, it contributes to good behaviours. Yeah. So obviously it all depends on the person, but I feel like it's used in all aspects of life and stuff like that. Yeah. But obviously it takes the person as well to have their own understanding.
So you are clearly very, you're very intelligent, Ezekiel, you present yourself really well. You are you are critical because you're thinking about these things, and you've just described it really well, that actually some people in our communities, and this would apply for women as well, but we are obviously talking about the impacts this has on young men, perhaps don't have that and perhaps are in a sheltered environment where they are in that echo chamber and it is narrow, and therefore they are being influenced by some of these extreme ideas, and therefore these behaviours are happening.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts about how we, and when I say we, I mean like the bigger we, the system, you know, we have society, we have cultures, we have education, we have parents, we have social media, we have people who are responsible for social media and tech. How do we support and help those young men so that they don't go down that rabbit hole? What do they need?
I feel like obviously society as a whole has to help, but mainly men have to help themselves.
Okay.
Because obviously no one's going to understand a man besides a man. Like, men are going to find it easier to spill their feelings out to another man than they are to a woman. Like, not to say that a man can't do it, but there's a level of understanding there where, like, obviously women will...
It's the experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I can speak as a female. There are certain things unique to the female's body that another female would perhaps be able to understand more.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I say that, as in, like, for example, me as a black person and you as a black person, we most likely would have shared similar experiences at some point in our lives.
Like the experience of racism.
Exactly. So if I experience racism right now, obviously you are older than me, but you would have been able, you probably would have experienced that as well. And you would have been able to shed some knowledge on that and like how you dealt with it to me. So obviously that's what I mean by like, when you get, and obviously like when it comes to friendships as well, a lot of people from a similar race or background will become friends faster because there's that understanding and, you know what I mean, open ability. But obviously, as I said, going back to what I said before, when it comes to men need to take that first step. And obviously, whenever it comes to men sharing their emotions, people tend to like laugh, you know what I mean? Because I think it's because men have had to hide a lot of men do this, and I know that for a fact. They hide their emotions and the things they're going through like laughter and jokes. But you kind of have to, because if you don't laugh about it, you're going to be upset and it's going to like, you're going to cry about it, or it's going to kind of like make you lose focus. You know what I mean? Because there's a big push on men having to like, because a man's future is his most important thing that he needs to focus on. Yeah. So when it comes to like, especially when men are in like people in education, obviously you're always focusing on, I have to do well in these exams, I have to do well in this, do well in that. And obviously you can't let things cloud your judgment, because as soon as you do that, you've lost focus and then it could just ruin everything. So I think there's a large pressure on what men need to do. Yeah.
You're talking to me and I'm feeling like, you know, there's a saying that I like, you have to see it to believe it and to be it. So there's something about role modelling, isn't there?
Yes.
And ensuring somehow, and I use the word ensure, but, you know, when we consider this challenge that we have and this sort of development of behaviour in society, how we can support young men who perhaps are more vulnerable to see those role models and to be able to see it and believe it. And, you know, young men to be able to speak to young men like yourself, Ezekiel, who can really help shed some perspective on that and perhaps help another young man recognise themselves and their worth and their great contribution that they can make, and perhaps not be limited to what they see on social media. Because I've just said see it to believe it in a positive way. That plays in the way that we're talking. If all you're seeing is things and narratives that are promoting this kind of behaviour, then that's what you're going to believe. So we need a bit more of the other side of things, don't we?
And I agree with that role model thing, because obviously a lot of people are going to follow what they see. So if you see a man behaving in a certain way, then that's what you're going to expect. Now, I'd say the UK social scene is very negative. I will say that for sure, because obviously I've been
you've experienced it.
I've been on socials. I have a lot of friends that have been on socials, and the UK is very negative. Even when it comes to like, it doesn't matter what gender you are, this is very negative. If you want to do something, put yourself out there to kind of like increase your connections or fan base, people just laugh, hate, and whatever. And those kind of things there, people may not think it affects anyone, but you can just see one comment and it ruins your entire day.
So this could be playing into them perpetuating, going down that rabbit hole with those other negative behaviours, right? And these things that we've been talking about recently related to toxic masculinity and that story of adolescence, for example.
And the issue with that is once like those comments or however people say it have taken behaviour or like taken action, and then the person that they've been saying that on has actually done something that's bad, and it's like, oh no, they did this, but you were the one that had put that comment there that made them do this behavior, and they're the one saying like, oh no, but you caused it. So that's what I mean by people need to take accountability for what they do as well, because for example, if you could be having a great day, to be honest, people care more about negativity than they do positivity, because one person could say you look good, but like you'd be like, oh okay, thank you. But like if 10 people say you look good, then you're like, oh, okay, now you're happier. But if one person says you look bad, you're thinking about that one comment for the rest of your day.
So there's the whole human experience, isn't it? But it's been a really good conversation, and I applaud you. I think more discussions like this with you and perhaps your peers to connect with the younger generation and to have conversations about these really important things is definitely something that the Hullraiser podcast will do to convene these important topics. So thank you very much, Ezekiel. Thank you for your time and for your genuine contribution and for being really open and honest. It's been really insightful and I've really enjoyed it.
No problem.
Before I let you go, though, I'm going to ask you a question, Ezekiel. Hull College student, which means you're a Hullraiser. What does being a Hullraiser mean to you?
Being a Hullraiser means to me, it's about community. And obviously, one of the main topics I touched on before is respect. It's about showing respect to others, because personally, you don't know what anyone could be going through. And you showing them respect could have made their day brighter. Or by you showing them respect, it could have given them that tiny bit of hope to make them believe that it's still worth continuing. So yeah, respect is one of the main things. Absolutely excellent. I'm going to take that forward with me in my Hullraiser heart. I'm taking that forward. Thank you very much, Ezekiel. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.